Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to WHIMs, and today I'm going to give you my reading for the 5th chapter of Angel Dust. And for those of you who don't know, Angel Dust is basically my story in parts, following a character by the name of Simon Parker Smith, who is, he has cerebral palsy, he's in his late 20s, still living with his parents, and he wants to get out and do more, and he wants to go and find love, he wants to be independent. But then one day he ends up coming into contact with a very strange phenomena where he starts to have dreams about being set on fire. And this chapter basically serves as answering all the questions that you might have had up until this point. So that's my introduction to this particular chapter. I hope you all enjoy, and if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more, please subscribe for more. And if you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications about recent uploads. So this is the chapter. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you're having a very good day, and enjoy. The taste of salt, the sound of water. There is the comfort of cotton between his fingers as he is found leaning backwards in the now netted water. Like an eggshell in reverse, Simon is without weight, without time, without place. All that remains, a worldless space and the sour taste. Simon opened his eyes and closed them quickly, stunned, thinking that the overstimulation was the result of too much light. Yet when he took a moment to ground himself, he was in a blank white room. There was no furniture he could pick out, with a careful look over his surroundings, but when he lifted his head up to adjust and gather his sense of place, his hearing was briefly muffled, only to be swiftly overtaken by the same casual humming of a light when switched on. He felt the cold yet lukewarm rush of water running down his neck, and the sudden splash when one is re-emerging from the deep. Someone felt his pulse quickening, and his heartbeat was going as if there was a steam hammer in his chest. Where the hell am I? The gradually aggressive swishing of the water surrounding him could be heard as he moved, loose-limbed and aching like he was heavily medicated after an operation through the threads of intravenous tubing. Simon heard his fingers crackle in a strange rubbery way, like they were laced with soap. He looked down, giving the fingers of his left hand the same wet splash and ripple surfacing effect, which he found oddly comforting in some instances and startling in others, and saw that there was an overlayering of skin which appeared to be akin to reptilian scales, but were strangely see-through, with a clammy and stiff texture, like plaster being held together with his sweat. A strangely familiar rush of nausea occurred as he turned his body over in the pool of water. The doctor's voice, before bringing him under, told him, "Once the sleeper gas has taken effect, Simon, I want you to count backwards from 100. Can you do that for me?" Simon's eyes were red-rimmed from the recent upset of leaving his parents out in the hallway. The sensation of warmth as Simon's cheeks brushed his mother's silently weeping face, and the firm yet comfortable cradling of his father's palm supporting his son's head as he leaned his head back. Simon knew even back then that his mother worried continuously about him. Children have an instinct for picking up on the emotions of adults. It's like what they say for newborn babies when sensing stress. All we can do as people when someone is in pain is to cry back, to show that we are all human, to show that we are all one and the same after all. Simon remembered holding the words yes on the tip of his tongue, but when the question was given to him directly, he found his voice had failed him. The simple words yes and yes was sealed inside his throat, unable to move, like a half-chewed piece of processed food. So he nodded, as a naked tear brushed his cheek. He laid back, watching the men and women talk over the process for what to do the second Simon's eyes were shut. Simon then heard a hissing sound from under the place where he laid his head, slowly droning on from awareness to oblivion as he breathed. 99... 98, 97, 96. The room went dark. The tall, looming shapes of the people in masks vanished, and the mood was set with a single command. "Let's get started." Simon was jolted from his wandering thoughts by something from the corner of his eye. It was a long, thin shroud in shadow with a hunchback appearance when it lurched itself into the pool's edge. "Are you relaxed enough?" the apparition spoke when the temperature of the water was seen to with its touch. "I'm sorry to have startled you. I haven't seen a human in many years." "I'm Artemis, Mother of Courage, and I'll be overseeing your operation today." Have you been awake long?" Simon froze when the half-human-looking creature stared at him in its shrouded robes. The strangest thing about the creature calling itself Artemis was that it was tall and bore the same scales across its skin as he wore round the knuckles of his own hand. It had a round, shaven head and the alignment of eyes, and its nose was angular, like the shape of a fish hook when it was seen long ways and in the right source of light. "Would you like me to repeat the question?" the creature known as Artemis said, the eyes briefly sliding apart before vanishing like elongated discs under a thick sheet of skin as she blinked. Simon stirred in an unconvincing tremor of voice, trying to hide the fact of his not becoming spooked. "Have you been awake long?" No." Simon found his words urged with a passing of grit down his throat. "I'm sorry, no. No, thank you very much." "No need to be polite. I know it must seem strange to you, but I'm grateful you're pretending not to be alarmed. That's what I find fascinating about all of mankind. The pretense of comfort, the false smiles when around familiar yet not well-liked company. I've always found that's always amused me, even after thousands of years." As Artemis talked, Simon couldn't help but be shaken into mobility, careful when checking he was still sound of mind, upon looking at the creature and the distortions of its face. "I'm sorry. You're looking for an explanation. What are you doing here? What is this purpose I was speaking of? It's really quite simple." The words remained unfinished as the silence left a vein of discomfort to Simon's half-naked form. He could see himself reflected in the marble-arched eyes of the Artemis being, as it gave off a vacant stare, unblinking, as Simon sat cold and confused further still. "Please don't hurt me," Simon thought. Simon made to clear his throat. Excuse me, but what is the reason? Sorry about that. Excuse me, but what is the reason?" The one called Artemis blinked and was lost for a moment. "It's simple, really. We've been watching you." Artemis blinked, made as if to stir, like she was lost once more and resurfacing her senses with the covering of her eyes. "Please forgive me. I never used to be this way. I've lived many lives. I've lived many lives, child, and I've seen many things. When you get to my age, the age I am now, you begin to appreciate the moments when things just stay with you, and only when not needed any more." Simon, who had not spoken for fear of saying the wrong words, but looking with both horror and curiosity, it reminded him, in fact, of the fold-away arm of which he often used for practising when his parents weren't in the house. The first time the shower room looked like a crime scene, and the hours he spent in A&E made him wish he could forget as quickly as the fish-scaled figure leering over him with the same curiously wandering eyes. "Pity. Memory's like a tear in the rain, vanishes as an ageing hand through time does, if not held close and dearly. This is embarrassing. I'm showing my age, aren't I? If this was normal circumstances, talking to his grandmother, who usually greeted every word of welcome to Simon's mother with confusion, thinking that her grandson was still a boy when it already seemed years had passed. The chuckling she admitted when she knew she needed to give up the ghost always left Simon's mother, June's mum. I'll read that again. The chuckling she admitted when she knew she needed to give up the ghost always left Simon's mother, June's well-springed eyes, into laughter lines before the talk turned to well wishes and updates on home and family life, when the sorrow would be eased away with a strong cup of tea. Simon's gran always had hers with whiskey instead of milk. "You want some milk, Simon? You want some milk, my son?" Simon remembered smiling on that cool June evening. His hand was covering the imperfection of his mouth, brushing the front part of his thumb against the strange imprint between his upper lip and nostrils. "I'll make you some, then," touching his shoulder lightly with her withered as paper palm. Simon said, No, Gran, I want your milk." "Can I have your milk tonight, please?" Simon replied, probably aware in himself that he was pushing it when asking for the special milk in his grandmother's hand. His grandmother showed her teeth, and when she smiled... His grandmother showed her teeth with her smile when she laughed. Simon blinked. He felt a sting in his eyes. "Would you like me to tell you how you came to be here, Simon?" The man, paddling gently as if he was in a bath, sniffed. The image of his family and grandmother vanished as it went as he went about wiping the red shame of his eyes on his sleeve. Simon nodded, knowing no words were needed. "We've been watching you, Simon, for a long time now. We have been monitoring persons all over planet Earth to take part in a chance to become one of us. In your world, this is called rebirth, or apotheosis." The phrase rang in his head, rang a bell for him. He remembered once being told a verse from the great Scriver at school when that immortal came down to earth and promised mankind would be united with their divine brethren if they passed the test. "Whoever passes the ripples of this, my sacred fire, will join us, shedding thou mortal shell, like a hatchling from its egg, and those who don't will perish in the flames, though they won't get up again." Impressive. The practice was overseen for a brief spell by Zagreus, god of rebirth, after preaching safe passage and ascending to the heavens. He watched from a safe vantage his masterwork. However, many of those who joined him didn't have much faith or ambition, as many burst into flames, crumbling to the ground like snowflakes. Funny, mankind preaches its invincibility, but when it comes to the touching of a flame or fire, they melt. Simon could almost imagine the classroom in his mind when he recited the verse, the popping of colour in contrast to the almost illuminating overhead lights, making the otherwise pleasant colours and materials being on display make anyone feel akin to having car sickness when looking at them. On days when it rained or during Christmas was when the lights were most frequently switched on. Whoever dies by my hand shall come with us and prosper as divine, but those who fall by the hand whose intended malice shall fall unto unrest, drifting between living and non-living, until the hand that strucketh them is to await justice. His classmates blessed themselves by treating their foreheads as if they were their mouths, blowing a kiss toward the ceiling with 2 fingers raised. Then the class would chant, "Live well while the sleeper sleeps. Live well while the sleeper sleeps. Live well while the sleeper sleeps." "Artemis, where are we?" Simon surprised himself in how laid back he sounded. Perhaps the temperature of the water he was in had made him take leave of his senses. It's a celestial atom, made when the earth was in its infancy, but now just sits and waits for people like you to come along and serve its purpose." Simon couldn't believe his ears, but it would seem, given that what he knew of the planets and what he studied in school, this place with its oval-shaped appearance was in fact the fragments of a star. Make a wish, Simon. "That's exactly what we did. You always want to do more. Well, now you can." Wow, Simon thought, his shoulders relaxed and his temperament becoming mellow, and even allowing himself to be more accustomed to his surroundings. Then he stopped his delighted thoughts dead when he spoke. "Artemis, I was wondering, why did you ask if I knew about the rebirth or apotheosis anyway? Why, that's what we're doing, Simon. You're our new guinea pig, as it were. I'm using that word correctly, am I? Am I not?" Artemis asked, turning round to face the subject of her question after typing on a flesh-coated panel of buttons. "Ah, yeah, sure," Simon replied, further confused. "I'm sorry, you'd like to get out of the pool. Or your host is nearly ready." "Yes, please. I feel like a peach slithering from its tin." Artemis, who gave no obvious signs of understanding the joke, got Simon a wheelchair and proceeded to lift him out of the pool with the same netted yet viscous material one would find at the bottom of a sieve after draining. Artemis and Simon were gliding down a corridor of reflected glass and intermittent doors which were apparent by a single oval-shaped arch. The road to the vibrant white light beyond was mostly punctuated by silence as Simon peered at whatever familiar sights he could find. "I hear you've been to many hospital centres, Simon. Sorry if this may seem boring or mill-running to you." "Usually," a note of amusement in Simon's voice upon hearing an ancient being like Artemis getting a common phrase of his age incorrect, amused him. "But it's not every day you see a hospital like this." "You're doing well. Most people are beyond the point of communication at this stage. I know blessings don't count as much as they used to, but from what I understand, things like this must keep you thinking. Does it get much better than this?" Simon didn't know what to say to this. "I suppose it can't." The words rested on his tongue like the distant chanting of a prayer, and the closing refrain rolled around in his head like a headache, never easing itself from the blood-boiling irritation. Live well while the sleeper sleeps. Live well while the sleeper sleeps. Why do you keep saying that, Simon? Are you afraid that you might perish in the flames when you have achieved a higher self? Don't worry. Don't worry that others might be listening. But I suppose we can't always be everywhere at once. Like when your hands are busy and you speak into those little slabs of glass you keep in your pocket. Sometimes you're not available. Simon felt a twinge of a smile cross his face as a tear rolled down his cheeks. He thought about his family, wondering if he knew that he was gone. Are they looking for me? But he was also overwhelmed with excitement at the activity of motion he felt when realising he was inside a star. He then felt a rumble beneath his chair as the compartment and world quivered, leaving his vision blurred and his senses rattled as a loud thudding sound from above. What was that? Simon asked then, only slightly panicked, but taking comfort in the fact that a celestial being was by his side. There was a window up ahead. Quickly, or we might pass it. Simon took over while Artemis went ahead and opened one of the rounded shutters on the wall. Though Simon was rusty in his use of manual wheelchairs, he drew his hands back, palm side out, so that the pole around the wheel was just a gliding hand, so that his hand were palm side, and the pole around the wheel was just a guiding hand beneath his hands, like how a parent would guide a toddler when taking their first steps. The rest was up to them. When Simon got to the window, he could see a purple sky where these fellow stars were safely netted in a pinkish hue that reminded Simon, in a rather dull sense, granted, but it was crucial, and seemed like fresh milk when materialising or dematerialising in tea. Then he heard a sound which drew from his mind some confusion, as it was the sound he expected to hear alongside the sound of water lapping and relapping close to the shore. But it was confirmed that when he saw it in its glory, a whale's sweet speed in the slow atmosphere, that Simon couldn't believe his own eyes. Simon had to rub his eyes and pinch himself. He thought it was all imagined. A whale the size of an ocean liner was crossing past their window all of the time the whale had, and without the rush of it all at once. Simon opened his mouth to marvel at this wonderful thing, but his voice caught when he heard himself speak. What do you think? Artemis asked, bringing him out of his reverie. He didn't know what to say. Words were failing him a lot recently, and even if he could find the right word, it wouldn't be enough for what he could see in front of him. His mouth was open, but no words came. The galactic miracles of the highest order. But why else do you think whales wash up on the shores of lands from where you are? Those creatures, at least not all of them, come from the sea, and don't worry. Those creatures, at least not all of them, come from the sea, and don't worry, your family doesn't even know you're gone. Artemis quickly returned to commanding use of the wheelchair as Simon muddled through what he had just witnessed, slanting back in his chair, in a deflated mindset, but somehow full of energy. He wanted to say to Artemis in the solitude of this corridor, "Does it hurt, being reborn, I mean? Don't worry, your initiation happened many times while you were on Earth, so there is no need to fear this one. Trust me." And would I lie to you? That's fair. Sorry about this. Sorry for the long video, guys. Well, I have only just met you, so I need a little more than just trust and would I lie to yous. That's fair. I shouldn't have been so careless in my word uses. It's been ages since I spoke to a mortal directly, but still I have seen many changes in the world, and if I'm honest, it's really strange seeing the world moving on without you. There was then a silence, and this made Simon reflect. I'm sorry, Artemis, I've only just woken up here and I don't know what to say. Sorry, don't know what to say. I just saw a whale outside and the lines and mists of 1,000 or 1,000,000 galaxies, and to round it all off, I could be facing a rebirth. I don't want to be reborn. I just got my head around being and being born. What is rebirth? Like, am I dying? Is that what it is? Simon lifted himself up out of his chair and felt the touch of a hand on his shoulder. It was as bittersweet as the chill of his mother's tears when she kissed him on the cheek and wished him luck when he was about to go under, the first time at the age of 8. "It's okay, Simon," Artemis said, as Simon's eyes retreated into his hands, and the familiar childhood shyness of seeing others watching him weeping came into full effect anew. I don't want to die, Artemis. I don't want to die." "You won't." Even though he was hearing words of a small comfort, Simon still continued his sobbing. "What is the name of that machine you mortals have? The one where you put clothes and rags in, look really heavy and have a ring for a window pane, like the ones you see on the Star." "A washing machine?" Simon replied, his voice inaudible through his weeping, trembling voice. "Yes, when you put your clothes into that machine, your clothes aren't destroyed and put back together again. And they look good as new. When you come back to us, and you will come back to us, you'll still be you. You will still have all the memories of when you went under, and you will be clean. No stains or ashes or before you went under. Like when I was in hospital?" "Yes, of course, better even. I'm sorry if my words are of no comfort to you," Artemis said, sounding amused rather than disheartened in any way. "No, of course not. It makes sense," Simon replied, sniffling himself back to his senses. As they moved along the corridor, 2 tall figures came to align themselves with the chair and stared at Simon as they passed. He could hear them whispering as the wheel continued to turn like steam on the brow of polished glass. They vanished just as quickly as they entered his mind. Then when the rounded doors at the end of the corridor receded into a room, Simon shrieked and pushed himself back in his seat as the white light from across an earthly horizon darted like a bird in his line of sight. When it dimmed, a separate room conveying blue light with a flicker across a blank white screen, he could see full-bodied apparitions circling and turning like fishes in a tube the size of a football pitch. His eye was drawn onto one coated in a magenta shade. His eyes dyed egg-shaped white as he swam contentedly in the tube. "Welcome to the STEM, Mr. Simon Parker Smith." "Wait here for a moment, please, whilst I check to see if everything is in order." Simon approached the glass screen known as the STEM, a capsule or pill enlarged to cover planets. Simon went to touch the glass, and the surface was smooth, sticky, but cool when it rested in the palm after touch. When the creature saw him, several flocked to the screen, same as a dog when greeting a friendly visitor. The creature who caught his eye, whose colour had now adopted a light pinkish hue, swirling around the place where the rippling screen and Simon's touch crossed over. He cleared his throat. "Hello? My name's Simon. What's your name?" Simon, with a stifled quality to his tone, giving the object of his question. He never even considered the possibility the creature in front of him even had a name, or knew what it meant to have a name. While Simon allowed himself to inwardly shake himself, maybe even invite a vein of humour into his situation, a voice spoke to him from inside his head. "Hello, Simon. Nice to meet you." Simon's heart was in his throat. His tongue quivered and seemed to shrink back inside his mouth, as if he were being dunked into ice-cold water. "Hello? I'm sorry. Hello? What's your name?" Simon asked, proceeding to clear his throat after he managed to stop his teeth from chattering and his hands from shaking. "Why are you sorry? What's sorry?" "Oh, it's just something you say when someone makes a fool of themselves, or if they've done something really wrong and they want someone's forgiveness." "Interesting. Funny you asked me about my name. No one has given me a name. No one has asked me about my name before. I don't think anyone has even tried. But since we're probably going to be bonding, I reckon you can name me whatever you want." Simon couldn't believe his luck. Not only was this multicoloured wisp of a candle gazing at him with the naive curiosity, the same as one might a tiger or chimpanzee at the zoo, but he was free to choose its name. He found himself thinking deep into the buried memories of his past, the friends he'd met, the bonds he kept long into the university days, then home again. A face stood out in the fog, the shape of a man standing upright, his arms and legs which you could bend at the elbows and knees, then his wings and face, a symphony in cream and his chest boxed in and the mock fabric of black lace. Simon remembered playing with the creature off and on throughout his childhood. He remembered riding the school bus alone to Heaver's Meadow, his best friend taken off sick. It was also a day when it was raining, so when it came to first break, his friends were gathered on the carpet and he retrieved from his rucksack his most precious toy. The eyes of his small congregation gleamed in wonder as he spoke his small friend's name. Angel Dust. Angel Dust. I think your name should be Angel Dust. Artemis returned and without much preparation asked, Are you ready to go in now, Simon? What? Where? The stems, Simon. How else did you think you were going to be commencing your apotheosis? Simon didn't even try to protest. He rolled his wheelchair up to the rippling mirrored edge of the screen. The surface played at being alive when touched. Then, on the count of 3, Simon plunged headfirst into the smooth, watery chrome screen, whose splashes travelled within the depths as he slipped through. Simon's entry punctuated by a bitter chill which made him think of ice and water. Simon was floating for a moment as the water shifted and swirled like a spoon of sugar dissolving into a flask of water upon being whisked. Simon dreamed he was being carried toward the light by a handsome man whose bulge between his legs made itself known with a nudge to his back and to the forever delight of Simon's lips. He got his wish. Angel Dust. Angel Dust. The entity known as Angel Dust felt powerful in his arms as his bare legs wrapped themselves around his own legs, still behaving himself while his sleeper, the man with cerebral palsy and a year before turning 30, slept in his arms. Rest now. It'll be over soon. I like the name you gave me. Where did it come from? How did you guess it? I had a toy kept in this giant toy box when I was a child. He was my hero. I liked how his wings looked when I pushed a button on his back. My friends and I used to enjoy fighting bad guys and saving the day with them. He was strong and brave, everything I wanted to be, but some I couldn't because I was scared all the time. Why were you always scared? Angel Dust asked, turning Simon over to face him, and Simon opening his eyes to the quiver of almost childlike curiosity which provoked an animal or infant to turn their head sideways. Simon saw a man with a beautifully chiselled chin, a well-maintained tuft of wavy dark hair which billowed in the depths like seaweed when he moved. His lips were blood red, and his back felt good to cling to. He saw the face of Dennis Wakefield, but he dare not say his name out loud should he confuse the newly christened and Angel Dust. I've always thought I was destined to be alone. I was born without brothers and sisters, and the few friends I did have scattered to the four winds when I left college. People whom I knew all my life, since childhood in fact, were gone in a flash. Except the one though. His name was Jason Birch. Simon tasted the bitter salt of overwhelming emotion enter his mind, the sting of his own tears having cleaved his heart in two like a knife in cutting an onion. It took me a while to get used to sleeping on my own and with the lights off. The first day of school was a nightmare where I thought my family abandoned me. What was I doing? I was born just to be forever worried, forever the sleeper, waiting to be saved. Were you were special, Simon, Angel Dust said, when the gloom of the deep was allowed to announce itself. You still are, since the day you were born and came to life in your mother's arms. You really are special to me, anyway. Thanks, but how can I be special to you? We've only known each other for 5 minutes. Well, we do have a lot in common. Aside from the obvious point of our first meeting, Simon interrupted, his sniffling feeling congested and sickly when he breathed in. So comes the price for crying in water, I suppose. The sound of Angel Dust laughing was a delightful sound which reminded him of Jason when he was around. Before he vanished, his laughter seemed to become a lighted candle through uncertain times. Seriously, though, I have a lot to thank you for. I didn't have a name before I met you, or I didn't have many friends, but you have given me direction by just holding me with your eyes. Simon didn't have anything to say at that moment. He just held Angel Dust's face as the bubbles which would have played danced without form from his throat. Simon then leaned in for the kiss, which was familiar, the same flush of excitement he carried in his teen years when Jordan Mitchell, his best friend, and he were alone in the pool at Eva's Meadow. Music played and everyone was allowed to do what they wanted on their last day at the pool after finishing their exams. The familiar playful heat of his breath on his skin made Simon's shoulders tense, the pressure of something secretive and to a certain extent ill-advised, given that an adult or supervisor could have walked in, given them an earful. He relished he was going in for his chance, or at least to taste his best friend. The man whom he was so closely tied to since his primary school days was now right in front of his eyes, the same dark brown hair with a small thread of blonde, which was the first trigger of his awakening, had played a little moustache on his chin as well. "I'm going to miss you," he remembered saying, and Jordan returned to the sentiment with a smile which made Simon's heart rattle in his chest to the rhythm of a steam engine. His baggy trunks were bulging outwards as they filled with air, and for a moment he could feel himself. His other self stood to attention while the lukewarm depths swished under his feet. His now drifting trunks kept Simon's mature delights safely hidden until it was time to exit leave. He was just grateful he wasn't noticed by his best friend as they stood face to face, the dreary water lapping contentedly over their arms. Simon felt ill from his dream, with the same bittersweet taste of sadness which picked at his eyes for the second time since meeting Angel Dust. There, it's all right, Simon. I just didn't think it would be this lonely. I didn't think I would have achieved nothing for many years. That's not true. You're here with me. It's not the same. I don't know what's going to happen to me now that all I know is my mum's alone, worrying herself silly. My dad is at work, worrying himself silly. My friend has gone missing, and I'm still lingering like a bad smell existing. If my mum hadn't had me, she would have been better off. Now don't say that, Angel Dust cried, with the first quiver of human anger trembling in his voice. Simon said nothing for a moment, not wanting to say the very thing he knew it would hurt his parents to hear, but at the same time being aware of his own complacent place he had found himself in, gently nestled between. It's a sin to sit in it with pain, and I'm sick of living with my own sadness, and knowing what sadness people have lived with inside of them because of me. Birth is painful for everyone, not just for you and her, Simon. Angel Dust spoke with some degree of optimism, but it didn't seem to bring Simon any comfort, only rage. Spare me. I know you and Artemis have been able to read my thoughts. You can tell what sort of things I live with. You can always tell what I've lived with knowing. Simon was reminded of the operations he had, the things his grandfather said when he was told he couldn't indulge in crawling or being carried to his great delight on his father's shoulder in childhood. Least he kill his father and leave his mother alone, and he without a father. He hated his grandfather. The hatred his grandfather would have for. Excuse me, I'll read that again. Simon was reminded of the operation he had, the things his grandfather said when he told him he couldn't indulge in crawling or being carried to his great delight on his father's shoulders in childhood. Least he kill his father and leave his mother alone, without a father. The hatred his grandfather would have for him from then on. The war wounds his mother wept to bring him to life. Birth is never shameful, it's just painful. I can change that, you know, Angel Dust said then, breaking the silence. What can you do? Simon asked. The note of hope in his voice is replaced, but with the air of such a promise being made, entirely fruitless to anyone hearing it spoken. I can take the pain away, make you feel better. If you're going to do it now, just answer me one question. Name it, Simon. Will I ever come back? All I can say is that you're half right when you say it's a sin to sit with pain, but to live not knowing true risk and reward. Simon then felt the air leave his mouth as his eyes flew open and sat and stared at the empty air, milk making dark waters muddy brown with the hidden depths. Simon's forearm bruised his face. Angel Dust's forearm bruised his face as he drew its pressure further in. Crack. Well, that's downright blasphemy. So that's basically chapter 5. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments. Sorry for the long video, by the way, guys. It was a very long chapter, or either that or I'm a very slow reader. But I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. Let me know what you think of this story so far down in the comments, and if you liked this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And I hope you're having a very good day. This has been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings, or Whims. I hope you're having a very good day. Take care, bye-bye for now.